Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. It has been 6 days since the FBI executed a search warrant and seized at least 24 boxes of material from former President Trump's Florida home and resort, Mar-a-Lago. The dramatic developments each day since have left us with more questions than answers. Here is what we know. The Department of Justice is investigating Mr. Trump for potential criminal action. A federal court authorized a search warrant after finding probable cause of impeding the investigation, as well as the removal of classified national security records and violation of parts of the Espionage Act. According to the Presidential Records Act, the removal of materials is illegal, whether they're classified or not. The FBI seized 11 sets of classified documents, some marked top secret and above, including highly sensitive intercepts, plus material related to the president of France and Trump confidant Roger Stone's clemency. While in office, presidents can declassify most anything, but White House lawyers establish a paper trail. It is unclear if one exists for these items. The search was conducted with 2 of Mr. Trump's lawyers on site, but was not public knowledge until the former president announced it on his social media platform Truth Social Monday night. It was the first of many postings with the familiar charges of hoaxes, witch hunts, and other false claims. The outrage from his supporters was fast and furious.
I want to know what led to this. I think every Republican believes that the FBI, when it comes to Trump, and other organizations have lost their mind.
This should scare the living daylights out of American citizens. The way our federal government has gone, it's like what we thought about the Gestapo and people like that.
Threats against law enforcement spiked dramatically online, using extreme rhetoric not seen since the days leading up to the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Any threats made against law enforcement, including the men and women of the FBI, as with any law enforcement agency, are deplorable and dangerous.
Thursday, Ricky Schiffer, a Navy veteran who said he was at the Capitol on January 6th, was shot and killed by police following his armed attempt to breach an FBI field office in Cincinnati, Ohio. While the standoff with Schiffer was still ongoing, Attorney General Merrick Garland offered a rare public statement defending the search.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. The department does not take such a decision lightly.
A court then agreed to Garland's request to unseal the warrant. Trump's lawyers did not object. That warrant gave us some insight Friday into what was seized. The DOJ investigation began months ago following the National Archives' discovery that some of Mr. Trump's presidential records had not been turned over as dictated by law. The former president acknowledged he'd taken material to Mar-a-Lago after he left office and returned 15 boxes in January. Soon after that, officials disclosed that classified national security information was among those materials. This spring, a federal judge issued a subpoena in search of further records that investigators believed he failed to turn over. On June 3rd, federal agents returned to Mar-a-Lago to discuss additional material that was missing. CBS News has learned that a Trump attorney certified in writing after that meeting that all classified materials had been removed from Mar-a-Lago. DOJ suspected that was not the case, which triggered the FBI's retrieval last Monday. And there is still a lot we do not know. News organizations, including CBS, have filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the release of the underlying affidavit that would outline evidence and give us insight into why DOJ officials believe a crime possibly has been committed. We begin today with Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa, Chief National Affairs and Justice Correspondent Jeff Pegues, and Congressional Correspondent Scott MacFarlane. You've all been busy. Jeff, I want to start with you in the news overnight that Homeland Security has issued this rather frightening bulletin, frankly, using language talking about threats to law enforcement around the country. Nicole Skenga obtained it, and according to the bulletin, it says the threats are specific, including a threat to place a so-called dirty bomb in front of FBI headquarters, and there are calls for civil war. What are your sources telling you about the risk?
Yeah, this is, as you noted, one of the most chilling bulletins I've read, and I've read numerous bulletins dating back to the days of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And so this is the domestic threat here. And according to the bulletin, which I was just looking at again, part of the concern are some of these drivers, public officials making statements in support of this search. Mar-a-Lago are against criticizing the search, criticizing the FBI. And so you have FBI officials right now concerned about the safety of their agents, employees in general. And then, as you noted, that dirty bomb reference. So there is a lot of concern around the country, and this is the kind of bulletin that will go out to all police agencies so that they are intent on sharing information because, frankly, you don't really know where the threat is really going to come from.
And it mentions continued concern going into the midterm races as well. Robert, I want to go to you now. You know, we were talking about this investigation and putting it in the scope of all the different probes, and we tallied them up here. For the former president, there are at least 3 investigations at the federal level that we know about. 1 state probe in New York into the Trump Organization. A grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia, is looking at his attempts to overturn 2020. We're not even talking about what's happening in Capitol Hill. These are investigations underway right now. This, however, triggered the most significant law enforcement response to date. What are your sources telling you about what the FBI has actually found?
It's such a good reminder, Margaret, that among all these investigations that are ongoing, this one, going back to the spring, has been very serious. And the Attorney General's statement underscored that. It began with a subpoena in the spring and then the search, the meeting in June, then that led to the ultimate search in August at the president's residence. They are looking into the boxes that he had personal materials as well as classified materials, allegedly, that were then included as part of the trove of materials and documents that went to Mar-a-Lago. They are highly alarmed behind the scenes about the possibility that, as you have reported, intercepts, sensitive information about national security, defense projects were part of what the former president brought back to Florida without checking with other people. Some associates of the former president say, hey, he is someone who sometimes wasn't organized. But for the Justice Department, that's not going to be an excuse. That's part of their investigation. What does he have? Is it a threat to the national security? And they want him to give it back, but it's already a legal battle.
And why wait 18 months to act? What triggered this tremendous response this week? We have so many questions. I want to get to Scott and come back to you on the politics of this because we're already there. But Scott, on the threat levels, I know you have been watching the level of concern out there preceding the events of this week. You know, when we look at the former president's statements, he uses words like siege, attack, that the FBI is really targeting him. He has not called for calm. He is continuing to use this rhetoric. What impact is there?
Immediately, we see this quick acceleration of ferocious chatter on social media platforms, on chat groups, from potential extremists targeting the judge who signed the search warrant. They're trying to deduce who the FBI agents were who were part of that search. But that's just an inflammation of an already dangerous situation stemming from January 6th. The prosecution of the Capitol riots has created its own radicalization. The D.C. federal judges handling the January 6 cases are getting vile, vulgar death threats. The people who are part of the investigation are getting threats. The prosecution itself is radicalizing people. Now we have a force multiplier, a search of Mar-a-Lago.
And what's so interesting here is we're not just talking about rhetoric online. For Homeland Security to have gone out, taken what you laid out, and then issued a bulletin saying this is a real specific threat, that shows that this is increasing. This isn't just people talking out of school online.
Well, exactly. I mean, look what happened in Ohio on Thursday with this Ricky Schiffer who took action, tried to attack this FBI Cincinnati office, but was shot and killed. But it is the kind of threat that officials are concerned about. These are lone actors who are motivated by some of the drivers, which is these public statements from public leadership that they support, they endorse. And what you are hearing are these calls for armed rebellion. And there are people out there who obviously have access to the weapons to really cause some damage.
Which is deeply concerning. Robert Costa, you have been reporting that the 45th president would like to run again and is making some plans to run for president in 2024. How does this impact that?
This is factoring into his decision in some way. I'm told by people close to him this weekend that he's still moving toward an announcement, despite all of the legal challenges he is facing. Potentially,
So this isn't damaging.
Well, we're not saying it's not damaging. This could be extremely damaging. We have so little visibility into what he put in these boxes. Was it a grave national security threat? It could be politically explosive down the line, but we don't want to get ahead of that in terms of the political impact. But in no way does it seem to be deterring him from moving toward one. What we are seeing behind the scenes also is he's arguing that he has some kind of declassification. I spoke with National Security Advisor, the former one, John Bolton, who worked for Trump, and he said any argument that this was somehow declassified won't hold up, because he said the president had the responsibility to take care of the records he was given from intelligence briefers. Even if he brought them back to the residence, he had a responsibility to make sure they were filed properly, and that even if he didn't have the intent of committing a crime, that it was the wrong thing to do.
And there'd be a paper trail. This is an ongoing story. I know all of you are busy. Thank you.